Well, hello there. It's another day. I'm Jim Harrington.
And I am Bill Knight. Hump Day, downhill slide to the weekend now, and the news has only begun. It's kind of been an interesting week, don't you
Yeah,
think?
since yesterday's program, we now have two major nuclear powers on the edge of a war.
Yeah, between them, I think they've got, I have the number right here somewhere, something like 400 and, it'd be 342 nukes between them. 172 for India, 170 for Pakistan.
Wow.
When one nuke flies,
Yep.
everybody's going to get in on this.
Well,
This bang gang.
I don't know. I think I know what you're saying, but I think that maybe a lot of countries like Russia's got its hands full.
Well,
And
it's close by.
And the United States is going to stand by and try to be the peacemaker, I think. And I think China, look, they don't want to have a war on their border, and they don't want to be involved in a war on their border, even though they're an ally of Pakistan. So I don't know, Bill. I think that this may be a localized, if there can be such a thing, it might be a localized war, maybe not even a nuclear war.
Well, look, hopefully not a nuclear war, hopefully not a war.
Yeah.
But if a nuke flies anywhere, they talk about global warming. There you go. It's going to screw up the atmosphere. It's going to get into the jet stream. So you don't want a nuke going off anywhere because there's going to be long-term residual effects that we'll see for generations.
Well, the world is holding its breath right now. If you hear all the news programs, in case you're wondering what's going on, it's confirmed that apparently Pakistan has been a haven for certain terrorist groups. Mm-hmm. They're not really part of the Pakistani government, but Pakistan itself has kind of like turned a blind eye to these different terrorist groups that are along the Indian border. And they've been going into India and causing a lot of problems, wreaking a lot of havoc, and then retreating back into Pakistan. And India finally said enough, no more. And so they launched some strategic attacks on these sites in Pakistan. And Pakistan then came out and said, no, we call that an act of war on us. Mm-hmm. Which is really nonsense. If Pakistan was really concerned about peace, they would say, okay, we're going to help you find these terrorists that are hiding along the border because we don't want war either. It's almost like Pakistan is allowing it to happen because they're looking for an excuse. There was a time, by the way, when they were both part of India. They were both, Pakistan was once.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and there's been a lot of problems in that area for a long, long time. I'm talking centuries. Before it was two countries, it was religions, the Hindus and the Muslims. They were always going at it. So this is not a new conflict. And it shouldn't surprise me that Pakistan is not going to help India to get these people. So you have to wonder, does Pakistan want a war? I don't know. Bill.
I would hope not. I mean, that would be very shallow thinking in the minds of their leaders. But there's a lot of weird stuff going on over there. And a little shift, if you don't mind. The Harry Truman lost another FA-18 fighter jet. I guess the catapult or something that catches it. The plane went overboard and down into the Red Sea at the bottom of the
What
abyss.
they didn't tell you is they also lost another one, supposedly was shot down. So we've lost 3 in the past 2 weeks in that region.
Yeah.
And Bill, the thing about this one, did you hear? It's at the bottom and it's unrecoverable.
Right. That's what I was going to say. It's unrecoverable. But now, the other thing that they didn't mention that was going on, the Harry S is the one that had to make that sharp turn where the plane fell off and, the tow crane and the whole 9 yards.
Right.
But there are satellite photos that show it under heavy attack by the Houthis. They are hell-bent on taking down that aircraft carrier. And I don't know about you. You know, you don't want to put your tail between your legs and run, but it is a big fortress, even though it's one of our older ones. It is. And what a catastrophic blow that would be to us if they sunk it, killed the crew,
Right. I
because
agree.
that takes all of our might and power, and it's the thumb and the thumb to it. So we shouldn't be flying in the face of them, going on. We ain't going to move. You can't do
Well,
nothing to us. The
all,
hell they can't. They can, obviously.
all I keep hearing from the government is that we are striking back on the Houthis, but if we were having an effect, you would think it would stop the attacks, but it doesn't seem to be doing that. You know?
No, there's a lot of them, and that's their power. Sometimes something can be too big and powerful, and be too close for it to be any good to its own self. In other words, that ship was designed. Yeah, it can be up close, but it was really designed to, wreak havoc from afar. It can send its hornets out to go and do damage. It can fly, rockets and missiles and nukes if it needed to from afar. It doesn't have to be up close. So, it's sitting there is I'm a big bully, but I can't get out of my way fast enough. It can move, but I'm just saying, if we leave it there at some point in time, they're going to get that lucky shot.
Yeah.
And then, who's
Now, Bill, what I was wondering, we talked about it being unrecoverable. I was thinking they must have a crane. They must have a crane somewhere on a ship somewhere that they literally can track the location of that. They've got to have some kind of a honing device or some kind of a ping that they have to know where it is.
transponder
Yeah.
going off?
And you would think that they could send a crane down, even if it's a mile down. I'm not talking about a man crane, and just grab the thing and pick it up. It doesn't have to be done with precision because obviously it's a wreck, but you don't want to leave that stuff out there for our enemy to figure out a way to get it.
Yeah, I thought about that. You got to have a way to get it. I would think a mini submersible that are designed to go deep, 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 have it refitted with mechanical claws to get it and bring it up, or two of them to do it. That would be the thing, because if we don't think of it, somebody else will, because there's technology on there, there's armament. The other thing I thought that they should do is, if this is starting to become a problem, that these planes, when the pilot ejects or there's no pilot in it, it goes into a self-destruct safety mode that just you've got nothing but
Yeah, I was thinking that there should be a way to
trash.
detonate it.
Yeah.
To even on the ocean floor. If it's on the ocean floor and they can't get it, it's not retrievable. There should be some kind of a fail-safe device where you hit it, it destroys the airplane. If you want it, you can have the pieces. So
I agree.
It'll be interesting to see whether they. And I do think, Bill, that we don't know the whole story about what's going on down there. I mean, over with those ships. I mean, they say it's unretrievable or you can't get it, but that may not be the case. They may have somebody down there right now getting it, for all we know. But I was impressed with the fact that it missed the restraining devices on the carrier, and the pilot and there was a navigator on the plane. They both were able to get off, eject before it hit the water.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the most valuable part in that plane is the crew. That it'll always be that way, no matter what the technology is. But we've got to take safeguards to secure that technology. And look, I don't want to second guess military commanders, the government, or anything, but that ship still needs repairs. It's still running around with repairs that were left from the Biden administration. Maybe it's time to, deploy something else. Maybe not there where the Houthis can get to it, and get that ship out of there, and send it home to go get some repairs and upgrades.
Well, the other thing I was thinking is that you would think one of the most common things that happens on an aircraft carrier is landings and takeoffs, and when they land, I'm sure most of our listeners know how it works. There's a hook in the tail that comes down on the back of the airplane, and it grabs a wire that the plane rolls over. and that wire is on pistons, and like shock absorbers, and it literally slows the plane down to a stop in a matter of seconds. But it's a very common procedure. Every plane that lands uses one of those hooks to grab hold of the wire. For it to miss the wire, that's a failure on the part of the pilot. You know, they're supposed to come in at a certain angle, at a certain altitude, and they're supposed to be able to hit that wire like it's second nature. So if he missed it, that's the pilot's problem.
Right.
And I don't think the wire itself would malfunction. I don't think that they're made.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah, I mean, and I wouldn't even want to go with diversity, equity, and inclusion there.
Well,
because I'm sure that this pilot was well trained and everything, but
well,
now would be the time to sit there and take a step back and do a complete review A to Z, because there's something going on.
I grew up around Newport, Rhode Island. That's a big naval base. Even now with downsizing, it's got a lot of Navy people. And what I remember as a young man back in the 60s and 70s is that I would go by the ships that were in dock, and if they weren't newly painted, they were painting them. They were always painting them to make them look fresh and clean, and basically to keep the rust off the ship. During the Biden administration, I saw some pictures. They were rusting. They let them go.
Well, now that brings up an interesting point. Out of the carriers in the fleet, the Truman is one of the older ones.
Right.
She's pretty old. How old she is, I would be making up a number to make one up, but
maybe 40 years old.
Seriously. Yeah, I was going to say probably 40, maybe a little bit over.
Yeah.
Now, think about it. You're talking about, the little tow tractor went over too.
Right.
Well, that tow tractor was probably brand new when it was installed on the ship. And it was a couple of years old then, because from start to finish to, christening of the ship, it takes a little while. So, but either way, it's new when you start it up,
right,
and it's new from that point. But if you had a car that was 40 years old and you're driving it today, it's not your main drive car. And chances are, if it's looking pristine and everything, every part in it's been replaced in some place, shape, form, or fashion, or reworked. But you wouldn't trust it, to be reliable because of the age.
I'll give you an idea, Bill.
Our fleet is getting that way.
I drive an
Russia went through that.
I drive an older car. I love my car. My car, if I told you how old my car was, you go, oh, that's ridiculous. But I like it because I've maintained it. I've taken good care of that car. I have replaced things, and I have maintained it consistently through all the time that I've had the car. So I've had mechanics say to me, I wouldn't get rid of this. Why would you get rid of this? Everything that's wrong, you've replaced. And that's the Navy. If you maintain the ships, if you keep them painted, if you replace the parts that are wearing out, if you keep it up to date, that ship can last you forever. But all you have to do, especially on a big ship like a carrier, is to go 4 years and cut back on everything. And I think that's what's happened with Biden. I think they figured, we don't have to paint it every year or every 2 years. They cut back.
Well,
go ahead.
Case in point, it's going to sound like a shift, but it's not. The radar failure at Newark Airport.
Right. Oh, I was going to
90 seconds. During the Biden administration, they knew that the radar was old, dilapidated, and whatnot. But Belladonna Buttigieg, Pothole Pete, decided
$5 billion they had for for infrastructure for the system, and they didn't do diddly with it. I want to do a little experiment here, if it's okay with you. Let's see. Okay. They throw the word 90 seconds around, the words 90 seconds around like it's no big deal. I'm going to give you 90 seconds right now. I have a stopwatch.
Sure.
All right. So now pay attention. You're a pilot. You're flying, let's say, a 737. You're doing 350, 400 miles an hour. You're in the general vicinity of New York City or Newark. And all of a sudden, this happens. 3, 2, 1, start. Okay, so the 90 seconds started, and you're flying blind. You're in the air. You've got a plane load of people. You were just talking to the tower, and suddenly you look down, and all your equipment is malfunctioning, you think, because you're not getting any information. And the tower says to you, well, we can't let you land because we can't see you. And you say to them something along the lines of, well, should I go to X protocol? And the guy says, no, you don't understand. We can't see you. We don't know where you are. Now you may say, okay, 90 seconds, it should be up now. No. We still got a ways to go, folks. We still got a ways to go. It's still a blind flight right now. You are still flying in the dark. As we speak, we've still got a ways to go. And you have no idea what to do. You don't know where the other planes are in the sky. Let's say you were on approach to Newark, right? And all of a sudden, you lost everything. You don't know whether there's a plane above you, below you. And I'll tell you right now is 90 seconds mark.
Yep.
90 seconds. That was a long time to be up there, essentially with a blindfold on. Mm-hmm. And the thing that gets me is they don't really know. They're saying, well, the equipment was bad, it's old and stuff. And it is. They use floppy disks. Okay.
Yeah, floppy disk.
Yeah, they use floppy disks.
Look, let me just put it to you bluntly, not meaning to be crude or anything like this, but children have been conceived in less time than that. So 90 seconds.
That's a long time to be flying with your eyes closed. And
yes.
Man.
And, put it in perspective. You can burn your eggs in less time than that.
Yeah.
You can, there's so many things that can go awry in 10 seconds.
And you have to remind yourself, these planes are doing, 300 miles an hour, 250 miles an hour? That's amazingly fast. And a lot of decisions have to be made based upon where you are in the sky. You don't know. You've seen this. I'm sure you've seen pictures. All of our listeners are pretty astute. You've seen pictures, for example, of planes landing in San Francisco. They will land two planes at the same time, side by side. Mm-hmm. So you'll be coming on what the runway is right, and there'll be another plane coming on their left runway. They parallel each other, and if you look out your window as a passenger, you can see the other plane landing. That means that tower is coordinating two planes at one time. Mm-hmm. I think they can do that at Newark, too, at Liberty.
Yeah. By the way, 300 miles per hour.
On landing?
In 90 seconds.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, you're doing the calculations and everything. 300 miles an hour in 90 seconds. You traveled 5.1 miles. Oh, what could go wrong in 5.1 miles?
Everything. Really? Everything go wrong. Everything go wrong. Are you kidding?
So there you go. Your distance, your speed time equation is 5.1 miles. They hadn't a clue what was going on.
Have you gone to a major metropolitan airport at nighttime? And if you go out by the airport, you'll see the planes line up. I mean, literally. I speak from experience, like in Pittsburgh, for example. Mm-hmm. If you go out to Greater Pittsburgh International Airport at nighttime, it flies over a shopping center. So if you happen to be in that shopping center and look up, you can see like maybe 3 or 4 planes, one after the other, and they're all lined up to come in. So when the first plane lands at 180 miles an hour, 160 miles an hour, he's got to get that thing slowed down, stopped, and off the runway ASAP. He's got to get that thing off the runway because there's another plane that has already been vectored into that same runway, and he's coming in hot. He's already got approval to land, so you got to get your tail off the runway. And when he lands, he's got to get off the runway because that third plane is coming in.
Yeah,
And that's
I
what
mean, yeah, you hear the reverse thrusters. They reverse that engine to slow it down. They hit the brakes, and you lunge forward in your seat and you're going, what the hell? But, he's got only so much distance. And now I was in Alexandria, Louisiana one time. I flew a flight into there and, they were going, well, we're not really supposed to land at this airport, but it was an emergency. And the reason they weren't supposed to land at that airport, you couldn't stop the plane in time until it ran off the runway. So we had to get out and walk through the grass onto the tarmac and, go back. And they had to bring in something to tow that plane. And a crew, I think they dismantled it to get it the hell out of there. I forget. It was a long time ago. But, they don't have a lot of space and time.
and nothing's busier. And I've been in a tower. I've been in an active control tower years ago while they were vectoring airplanes, and you don't do any idle talk up there. You don't interrupt the controllers because they are focused. They're in a zone, these guys, and you can tell them that their pants are on fire and they're not listening because they're literally paying attention to what's going on that screen. It was so bad in Newark last Monday that some of the controllers have had to take paid leave to get out, and because it was so traumatic. They got a form of PTSD. They were because they envisioned that the planes they were controlling were all going to collide and crash. They don't know. Some of them, I'm sure, don't know how it didn't happen.
Well, here's a thought for you. They were blaming all the airline stuff on Trump, all right? Because this is Newark. The other one was Reagan. How many airports do we have, and how many are in sad shape with floppy disk computers? That goes back to the 80s, friends. If the air traffic control is older than some of the planes that are up there, we got a real serious problem. We got a guy on the Democrat side that thinks he's going to run for president, who was a mayor of a town, that said, I'm going to fix the potholes. What happened? He didn't fix a damn one, and they got more potholes. You want this clown in charge?
I heard Sean Duffy, the transportation secretary, say that they've already put a plan together to modernize the system, but it still may take 3 or 4 years. And I was thinking as he said that, okay, God bless him. I think it's well intended, but if we had that same attitude in World War II, we wouldn't have tooled up for wartime production until the end of the war. Mm-hmm. The fact of the matter is, they literally went out to Detroit, the government did, and said, we need to have you start making tanks yesterday. And the Detroit answered by saying, no problem. It did. Obviously, it took them some time to tool up, but it was more like 6 months, not 3 or 4 or 5 years.
And because we had our priorities right at the time. We were at war. I heard somebody talking about the economy saying, well, one of the reasons that we got to have this kind of economy versus that is because, World War II, when we kicked in, we took Ford, we took, John Deere tractor. Everybody was making the war machine. That meant the little luxuries of life that we used to buy willy-nilly. You can't anymore because we're making the war machine. That's why you need this global market. And I'm going like, your priorities are up your tuchus because we were at war and we knew it. And maybe we've got misguided priorities now. Well, it's going to take 3, 4, or 5 years. We are at war with past stupidity, and we've got to correct it not 3 years from now, today.
Okay, so we're talking about what happened in Newark, and I'm hearing them say it's going to take 3 or 4 years to get a system in place. And I think we need somebody like Elon Musk, because I'll tell you, when Boeing screwed up that flight up to the space station, and they couldn't go back and retrieve their crew, it was Elon Musk who said, okay, we'll go get him. Now, you may think that it just was a matter of him fueling up his ship and sending him off. No. He had to literally learn how the system on the Boeing craft worked so that he could dock his ship on that space station. He had to retrofit a completely different connector, a hookup system, because it was totally different on Boeing. And he he did it. He just did it. The guy doesn't know what failure is. And I'm thinking, if you said to Elon Musk, how long do you think it would take for us to refit our entire system? He probably would say we can do it in 6 months, because it's probably a matter of getting the best computers, the newest software, and it probably is not as complicated as the government makes it out to be, because the government always does that. The government always makes it hard.
Because you've got everybody that gets in the money line going, oh, well, we can be in charge of this. And, well, no, if you do it that way, I don't make any money. So we got to complicate this procedure just a little bit more. You know, all the little gravy trains get hooked up and the project never gets done. But somebody gets, fat rich. I'm sitting here thinking about, there's the rumor that Musk might be buying Boeing. Well, that would be great. They make planes, they make rockets. He makes rockets. His rockets take off. They land themselves.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, the airport problem, not completely solved, but let's say that we redesign our commercial flights. They talk about the Harrier jet. That jet doesn't need a runway. It takes off straight up, and then the engines shift, and it goes forward. Could that be done with the airline industry? Because we got to upgrade the fleet anyway. A change in design of those planes. We don't need as much real estate to land the damn things. There's a lot less.
The other thing I was thinking of, Bill, was with those planes that were falling off the aircraft carriers, you would think that they could have some kind of a steel mesh netting system that they can deploy that literally could capture and catch planes from falling over the edge. It may sound simple, but
like a catcher's mitt.
Yeah, it would make sense to me.
See, one thing that people don't realize, the technology that is in an aircraft carrier, if you ever look at pictures, take a look at a Chinese aircraft carrier. And the reason that we have so many and other people don't, they don't know how to, in that length of the ship, make everything that catapults the exact length of the runway, the jets that can take off in that amount of time and you'll take right off and no problem at all. We can catch our planes. Now, for China, that deck has got a ramp.
Yeah.
So that plane's got to go and hit that ramp, which launches it, puts it in flight mode, like a kid taking a little plane, that you fly, that you get at the grocery store. He launches it himself. That deck has to do it. They don't have the technology. And I'm almost wondering if, maybe if they thought they could sink the Truman, they could go out there and salvage before we could.
Well,
we have a lot of technology there, but maybe it's time that we sit there and say, you know what? Wait until you see what's next.
Sean Duffy was talking about the infrastructure yesterday. Listen.
Everyone's shocked that the system is so old and antiquated, but it wasn't shocking to Joe Biden and it wasn't shocking to Pete Buttigieg. They knew we had an old system. They saw the GAO report saying it was about to fail. And so the largest infrastructure package, Martha, ever known to man in the history of the world, the infrastructure bill under Joe Biden, $1.2 trillion. They sent only $5 billion to fix air traffic control. And of the $5 billion, Pete Buttigieg spent less than $1 billion to fix this problem. Instead, he was focused on racist roads and changing the name of cockpit to flight deck or airman to aeronaut. Stupid stuff. And so now, as the Trump administration has come in, it was shortly after DCA, Martha, I started digging into the FAA and realized it wasn't just one small part of the infrastructure. It was the whole infrastructure that had to be built brand new. And so I've developed a plan. I've talked to the president. He's signed off on the plan. We now have to go to Congress and say, listen, Congress, this is imperative. This is really critical infrastructure. Let's get the money to build this brand new. It's going to take time. It's going to take, 3 or 4 years to build it.
I got to tell you, I still think that they are making this whole thing too long. It's an emergency situation. Mm-hmm. We may not have 3 or 4 years.
We're at war with our own stupidity and time.
Yeah.
We've got to.
Exactly.
We've got to sit there and realize that. If you realize that, light a match, hold it under your butt and get running. Let's get to it. Jump, move, do something instead of talking about it.
And
well,
Bill, isn't that our strength? Isn't that what we've done historically? is that we've risen to the occasion time and time again in a short period of time and done the job?
In Trump's words, World War II, even though it was old, we had this big, beautiful fleet, big ships, beautiful ships, had great names, the Arizona and whatnot. We had them all at a base in Pearl Harbor, and the Japs came in and said, yeah,
that's
think
convenient.
Again. Boom, it's gone.
Yep.
We had radar in place, the first radar.
Yeah.
And the guys that were up there saying, hey, we've got an incoming thing.
That's a flight that's a flight from the West Coast. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's nothing. It's probably a glitch. Forget about it. Yeah. Forget about it. Yeah, they forgot about it. They blew the hell out of us. Of course, when they did that, they knew they woke a giant because all of a sudden we got slapped. It actually took a couple of days for us to do anything. But when we did, Susie Riveter and the whole 9 yards, everybody became a part of the war machine, and we were building, and nobody was sitting there going, oh, he's just, we didn't name call each other. We worked hand in hand, and we kicked some butt because
now the other thing is,
in our face.
Do you think that the new system they put in place is going to utilize AI?
Yeah, oh yeah, everything that we do is AI, and that worries me.
Me too, big time. If you start having now, if AI is out there just being a second set of eyes and saying you're going to have a problem with these 2 planes because they're bunching up, you might want to check it. That's okay. But if it's making decisions, if it starts to say you can move closer or separate, that bothers me. If it's just making suggestions and saying take a look over here, you might have missed that. That's okay.
What happened in the Chinese lab where the guy was working on robotics?
That's where I was going, Bill. That's just what I was going to say. That's where
the guy that had the thing in the sleep mode. Well, what happened?
Well, we should tell people what happened. Okay, this is today. This is not a piece of video that we saw like a year ago. This is something and we talked about iRobot, the movie, which is basically about this problem. We talked about it yesterday.
Yeah,
on this show. And today, Bill and I are both looking at our show prep, and we see a video. Bill, tell them what happens in the video.
Well, apparently this guy is working on this robot, and they put it in sleep mode, rest mode.
Yep.
Maybe it's for him and not the robot, but either way, he wakes the robot. I think he went around to do something to it, and the robot, got into,
it went into testy mode.
Yeah, it got real pithy.
Yes.
And it charged after him. And, I mean, he's running away. And I'm sitting there going, wait a minute now. This is a movie script.
Yeah, and this is not like a little robot, the size of it. This was like a 6-foot-tall, fully grown, adult-sized robot. And it scared the living heck out of these developers. And it was swinging, not to tap them. It was swinging knockout punches. If he connected with those 2 developers, they probably would be hospitalized.
But now, why was that thought? Because everything it does has been programmed into it. So, were they training this to be, for entertainment boxing? Were they training this to be a trainer for troops? Were they training this to be a lean, mean fighting machine?
Well, let's say hypothetically that anger is a culmination of a number of different emotions. Mm-hmm. Hypothetically, let's say anger is a sum, of multiple things. Let's say it never programmed anger into this robot, but let's say if they programmed all of those other features, and let's say the robot took those other features and added them all together, and it developed anger. It surprised the developers.
So it's like having H2 and O.
Yes.
And together you've got an ocean of water.
Yes. Yeah, you
But
have
you
hydrogen
never knew
and
that.
oxygen, and together they're separate. You put them together, you got water, right?
Better know how to swim.
Yeah, exactly. I also I looked at it, I thought, my God, no, like you, one of the thoughts I thought of was it looked like it was a Chinese lab, and I was thinking, are they developing soldiers? Is this a soldier?
Going back to yesterday's show, one of the thoughts that I had, and I don't want to, you know, live in conspiracy, but let's just say, at the World Economic Forum, it was Bill Gates that said we need to get the world population down to a certain level.
Right.
And we talked about a deep state, which now I see that there are other people thinking the same thing as us. I see some of that today. Is there a deeper state? Well, and we talk about like Bernie Sanders, the top 1%. No, we're talking about the top 0.0001%. These are the people, money doesn't exist in their environment because they own the machine that makes it. It's a construct to control us. But let's just say they needed mankind to control because they need people to farm the crops, make the things that we drive around with, everything. Bill Gates is saying we don't need as many people now because we got robotics. So we need to wind down the world population. What if we're building to a point to where we could just wipe out the world population for this 0.0001%, and they have robots to sustain life? And if there's wars wars would come from interstellar wars, but we would have an army of robots that replicate themselves to fight. They would have everything that they needed to sit there and have eternal, paradise for them and their generations to come. And,
I find it interesting is the same people who would like to see our population shrink, they're always, meaning they believe in abortion and stuff like that. They believe in, they're pro-choice. They want to see us cut back. By the way, we have a crisis in our country right now. I don't know whether you were aware of this.
Reproducing.
We're not reproducing enough people in this country right now. But we'll get to that.
Well, Jim, that's why we need to import people, and even if they're thugs, we need to bring them in.
Well, the other thing is this:
so they can rape our children.
We're also building robots. We're building. They don't want these same people. Don't want you to have your own real people, but they are enthusiastically building artificial people to take your place. What the heck is that all about?
Well, let's just, hypothetically speaking, you bring in these robots and they're free thinking. At what point do you have to sit there and recognize the fact that they're conscious? That they are a life form in and of itself. And then is it internal to compensation, to rights, to different things? The
thing I thought that was interesting about the movie iRobot, which I think was ahead of its time, was that it proved that if you build a robot well enough, you can convince the human owner, I guess, that it's a person. It can become sympathetic. You can like this device. Let me give you an example. I have in my house here, I have a little hockey puck device. I don't want to say its name because it'll start saying, yes, can I help you? But you know what I'm talking about. Most of us have those little hockey pucks. Some of them call them Echo. The others call it that other name that I don't want to use because it'll set it off. You actually start to talk to it. Mm-hmm. You actually start to give it human qualities. I mean, and I think that's human nature. If it responds to you like a human, hi, Jim, how you doing? Let me tell you what the weather's going to be. After a while, every day doing that, hi, Jim, hope you had a good day. Here's the latest sports scores from your favorite team. You start to think of that device as if it's human. And I'll give you another case in point. My cohort in crime here, he has discovered a device, a program, AI program, that is incredibly powerful, incredibly sophisticated. It was, as a matter of fact, I think it was designed by Elon Musk. This thing is so good that it's frightening. It's frightening. and I'm not going to get into any details or anything, so Bill, you can breathe easy. But I mean, you can literally ask it a complicated question about just about anything, something that may take a human hours to research and to think about and put together a response. It can give you the response in what, 30 seconds, 90 seconds?
Roughly, yeah. I can sit there and put a report together that might take you a month to put together, 150 pages, something of that
Right.
nature. I can get it done in less than 5 minutes.
And that's where we are now with
Researched
AI.
with all the
Footnotes.
everything there. Yeah, with everything there. But now I will have to say, when you get the AI, you've kind of got to direct it a little bit, and I did test conversations, and instructed it. No, you got to create a file for me. You've got to create different things. And when it did that, all of a sudden, it addresses me. It knows It knows the things that I knew. It had. I mean,
And don't you
they
start to
said-
think of it like seriously, you start to kind of get this feeling that it's
I get
it's
the
a
feeling
being.
it has an idea, yeah, but I mean, I'm not, that's about as far
I mean,
as
you're
it
not
goes.
going out for coffee with it. I know that, Bill. But
No, no, usually I go for coffee. It has a can of oil, but other than that, nothing strange there. But no, you can do it because, think about it. Forget about that machine and everything. We were created in God's image. We are an organic, living, breathing computer. And you wonder, where do we store all the knowledge in every part of your body? And studying linguistics, you talk about people that have lost a limb and they get one from a cadaver, and all of a sudden they have memories, and this is fact, they have memories that they never had before in their life because their memories stored in cells that were in the other person.
well,
You know?
Bill, have you ever seen an image of the brain when it's thinking? If you watch, I forgot what the equipment is, like a CT scan, but you can see different areas of the brain light up because it's using different parts. And by the way, what's making it light up on the screen is electrical impulse, electronics. And that's what we have in common with the computer. The computer is electronics. So when you say, we are a living, breathing computer, there's more truth to that than you can imagine. It's not like just a colorful way to describe us. We kind of think in some ways like a computer. Electrical impulse. If you damage a portion of your brain, of your head, it'll affect how you perform. If you hit the area that controls speech, all of a sudden you can't speak. If you hit the area that controls motion, you can't move. I mean, that's how we are. We're a computer. And that's why, by the way, guys like Elon Musk are successfully building bridges for paraplegics, meaning if you're somebody who is unfortunately confined to a wheelchair, in the not too distant future, thanks to guys like Musk, the real possibility of bridging the break in your spine, it may be a reality. They may be able to get you up and walking. They were doing it 30 years ago at the Cleveland Clinic, but the problem was the computer was not practical. It was too big. They knew that they could get a computer to get you to stand up, but the computer was the size of a room. It was like dragging a refrigerator around. Well,
They've got computer chips that are smaller than the pinpoint of a needle.
Yeah.
Just the tip of it. It's amazing what they can do. And some people go, well, Elon Musk is not that smart. No, but he can do one thing. He can dream. And if you can dream, the world is your oyster. And he was able to put things together, and he knew that computers might be the key. And that's been his thing. And he surrounds himself with other dreamers and doers. And
the
all of a
smartest
sudden,
people on the planet.
and they're there. They're doing what they do. The only difference between him and somebody else, he's not necessarily a conservative or a liberal, but, he sat there and he likes what he does, and he's doing things. Sure, he wants to make money. Everybody does. But he's doing things to benefit mankind. And what he's doing now will be kids' play 50 years from now.
If he stops making money today, he'll still be rich when he dies if he lives another 50 years. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's so wealthy. He's in a different strata right now, income-wise, for most everybody on the planet.
Yeah, but he is not in the strata of that 0.001% or 0.0001%. He's not in that strata.
And speaking of stratas, I think we should pause for the cause, as they would say. A reminder that if you like the show, tell your friends about it, like and share our program with your friends, okay?
Yeah, and reach out to us, too, because that would be nice. Mail at itsanotherday.com. We'd love to hear from you.
The other thing I want to talk about, Bill, today is the Epstein situation, Epstein files. I want to play a tape for you. James Comer was being interviewed, James Comer from the House of Representatives, and he says he doesn't even know whether the files exist anymore. Listen.
Yeah. What's next? I mean, we did a little bit of a preview on the Epstein files, obviously. That's like finding a unicorn in Washington, D.C. You have come on and talked about that on this program, just for the sake of transparency, which is very big for you. And so in closing, any motion on that, any movement on that? We hear that there's a timeline now.
I hope James has the Epstein files, because I don't think the Department of Justice has them, or at least the Attorney General does not have them, or she would have turned them over. The President ordered them released. The Attorney General ordered them released. We all know they have not been released. And one of my biggest fears that I had, and I expressed this with Kash Patel and a lot of people, Stephen Miller, and a lot of people going into the new administration, I'm like, I hope they're not shredding documents right now. This was a few weeks before the transition. I said, I hope they're not shredding documents. But you all need to go on that first day and try to get all this stuff released, because, my fear is from what I've dealt with in investigations and in communication with this deep state apparatus, is they're probably in there shredding documents as we speak. So hopefully someone has a copy of that. And I hope we find out, because our task force has done everything, led by Anna Paulina Luna. You had her on your show many times. I mean, she's relentless. She's persistent. She's pretty frustrated right now that these files haven't been released, even though the President and the Attorney General have ordered them released. But, it's like I told Anna the same thing I told Patel and everybody else. I'm like, you assume that somebody in the deep state said, okay, we'll just put these in a file back here, this incriminating evidence on everybody, and maybe the next administration can do whatever they want to do with it. That's unfortunately the way it's supposed to work, but it hasn't worked with this deep state.
So they're just going to let the incriminating evidence sit there smoldering. That could put them all in prison.
I wish they should. That's what they're supposed to do. But you and I have dealt with them, Benny. You've covered the deep state as well as anyone. I mean, they cover their tracks. And it's just hard for me to believe they're going to leave incriminating evidence if the government was involved. If the government wasn't involved, I don't think they would have any reason to protect Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton. They're never going to be elected anything again. I don't think they would have any reason to protect Bill Gates or anybody else. The concern I've always had about the Epstein file was the government involved. Did the government know? Was the government using Epstein and the videos to blackmail the most influential people around the world? If that's the case, then they knew there were victims of sex crimes there, and they did nothing. So that's the concern I have. If the government covers this up, I don't believe it's because of any love affair or affection for the Clinton family. Just like I never believed they were hiding and covering for the Bidens because they loved Joe Biden. It was because they hated Donald Trump, and they didn't want their agencies to be disrupted. The same thing with the Epstein files. I don't know this, but my concern is that the government may have known a lot more and may have been an active participant maybe with the intentions of intelligence gathering. Who knows? But at the end of the day, I don't think the American people would be okay if the government knew that crimes against young women were occurring, and yet they did nothing to intervene.
House Oversight Chairman Representative James Comer on the Benny Show. It's a podcast from Benny Johnson. It's pretty good, and he expressed how I feel. I think there might be some government involvement here, which would lead me to ask the next question. Well, does that mean that the government might have, let's say, helped Epstein hang himself?
Well, the government's involved. The documents are going to be destroyed, wiped out. How convenient. Anybody that has any personal knowledge, like Epstein or whatnot, probably is going to get a very serious case of the suicide flu. And I would think that anybody that was a participant in that or received some of the benefits for whatever that they gave up might get that suicide flu too. But one thing that I do know about mankind is that somewhere along the line, somebody's going, this isn't right. I'll just put this little jump drive here and copy everything. Kind of like what Obama did before he left the White House. He didn't walk out with boxes of documents or anything. He walked out with a jump drive that had, 65,000 files or more?
So you're saying that even if they're destroying those documents, there's probably a good chance that somebody somewhere made a copy of all the stuff.
There's a decent chance. I'm not going to say a good chance because it depends on how close they were and how dirty they were or were not. Because when you're doing something corrupt, you make damn sure that the people around you are washed in the same blood of guilt that you are. So if I go down, buddy, you're going down with me, just so you know.
Well, I also wonder whether there's somebody who was doing the shredding who can be prosecuted, who can be discovered and prosecuted. There may be a case, if you can't get the files, get the people who destroyed the files.
There was that group I talked about it before out in Oregon. Won't go through it, but
right.
When one of the things that brought them down is they were killing people, doing a lot of things, and they ordered that their files. They had one guy in charge, and he was from the townsfolk that said, no, I need a job, so I'll work for you guys. Yeah, you're good guys, like you. And he came in, they trusted him, and he was dumping all those documents out in a landfill that would be burned and buried, and he saw a picture, and he liked it. And then he started looking at the box and going, oh, well, this information's really, I didn't know this. So he gathered it, put it wherever and got it out of there, and left everything else in the landfill. But he took that and turned it state's evidence. And those were the little things that brought him down. So somewhere somebody slips up and makes a mistake, and something can get copied and saved. And that's what you got to hope. But, I would go in with guns in hand, and I would just go and say, we want the documents.
Pam Bondi and Kash Patel right now, if they have no documents to present, should come out and say, here's the story. We got into government. We were ordered by the president to release the files. I told my people to gather the files but here's the thing. Here's where the lie falls in. They told us with the Epstein files that they were redacting certain things on those files so that innocent people wouldn't be, if they're mentioned in a casual way in these documents, they wouldn't be included in the whole.
All right, well,
the whole thing.
My thing to that is that I'm put in charge of a company.
Yeah, but
go ahead.
All I wanted to say was if you said to the people that you're doing the redacting right now and you're going to have the files out shortly, that says to me they've got the files. They told us they were doing redactions.
Maybe they thought they had the files, and what I was going to say, I'm in charge of an investigation. You're on my team, and I go, okay, we got the files in. You going through them? Yep, I'm going through them. Yep, we're redacting right now. And then, 3 weeks down the road, I'm going, well, where are these files? What files? Oh, no, we didn't have that.
I watched an interview a few months ago where Pam Bondi had said to the interviewer that she's seen the documents.
Well, maybe she did. Maybe they got destroyed within because there's people. I'm just saying there's more going on than meets the eye. Maybe the whole federal government's dirty. Maybe the administration's part of the sham, And if that's the case, we're all doomed. We're all screwed. I don't believe that. I believe that they walked in. They may have seen boxes, and they may have seen what looks like the files. And they could have picked them up and said, yeah, well, what's she going to do? Take, 17,000 files, put them in her purse? No, she's not. She's got to trust the people that are there are going to do their job. But who are they beholden to? Who are they loyal to?
Well,
what happens overnight when they go home?
We got to find out. We got to get something from the government.
Yeah.
They got to come out and say, okay, you're not going to get the files, or yes, you are going to get the files, and you'll get them by X date. Something has to happen. They just can't let it. Like I heard yesterday that all of a sudden the government said we have no date firm, no specific date when we're going to be releasing the Epstein files, which was a complete reversal from their approach before. Their approach before was you're going to have it as soon as possible. We're working on it now. There was an urgency to it. Suddenly they came out yesterday and said, well, we're not sure exactly when you'll get it.
What could be so deep and dark that they have to go, we've got to figure out how to do this?
Well, there could be people mentioned in the documents that might be embarrassed big time if they're shown the documents.
What happens if the documents change our perception of the government and the whole scope of history?
Well, I mean, would you want an honest government, or do you want a government that makes you feel good?
Well, I want an honest government, yes. But maybe
I want to know the truth, okay?
I want to know the truth, too. I'm saying there's one of two scenarios. Maybe it's so bad they don't know how to go forward, and maybe it's so bad that if they go forward, it's going to be a bad day for them and everybody concerned. Or,
All right, I'll give you an example, Bill. I remember seeing pictures of a Chief Justice on that airplane.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, I saw a picture of, it looked like Roberts on the Lolita Express. Now, that could be innocent. He may have been going for a ride between Washington and Newark, for all I know. He may have had an innocent reason to be on that plane, or there can be something else altogether. I don't know, but would that be enough to stop the release? If the Supreme Court justice said to you, "I don't want those things released because I was on the Lolita Express. It was an innocent thing, but just the mere fact that I was on it is going to sully my reputation and the reputation of the Supreme Court." Would that be enough to stop it? I'm just saying,
Yeah, I don't know. There's something that's going on here. Yeah, we need answers, and if they don't have an answer or something has been sabotaged, they just need to come forward and do that. But the problem that you have is that the media is 100% against you. So no matter what they come forward and say, the files have been destroyed, they've been stolen, that's going to be painted as a mark against Trump, and the entire administration. They will take that and run with it and say it never was, it was all made up, whatever they do. It doesn't matter which way you go. It's going to be a sad, dark day, and it is a publicity nightmare or a news nightmare, no matter what.
Okay, so
I don't know. I don't have an answer.
Time is going to tell. We're going to find something. Something's got to happen. It has to happen. Too many people are asking about the Epstein files.
Maybe somebody's got to take it for the team and going, they won't release these documents, but I'm going to grab them and I'm going to throw them out public.
That may happen.
Somebody's got to be a patriot. Chances are it's going to be somebody that has, they do it for, love a nation, because if they don't have family, that's going to be. It's kind of like when the Fukushima or Shimi or what that nuclear power plant in Japan that went into meltdown after the tsunami.
Yeah,
and they needed somebody to go in and shut down the reactors. So there was a guy, I think there was one or two guys, but there was a guy that said, I'll do it. I have no family. I have nothing. So they gave him a large amount of money to go do it because they knew when he went in there, he'd only have 6 months or a year to live, if that. And he did it. He took it for the team. Maybe this is that kind of scenario that somebody's got to take it for the team.
Hey, listen, if you like our program, do us a favor, like and share with your friends, or even if they're not friends, like and share our program, spread the word. It's Another Day with Jim and Bill. You know, we're talking about all these things, the Epstein files, things like that, but the other thing that's got a lot of people talking is the constant barrage of corrupt decisions that are being thrown out by these district judges. One of the most recent judges was a 91-year-old Clinton appointee who had to have his say in this whole process. So he came out with a ruling yesterday. I haven't got it in front of me, but it was another obstacle. What he did was he said that you cannot move these terrorist gang members to El Salvador if you're using a certain military law, but it's nonsense. And he made it permanent. That's the thing that made it interesting. He said it wasn't a temporary stay. It was a permanent decision. These people,
how does he have that authority to make
in my opinion, they don't. But, if you just keep allowing these people to do this without consequence, they assume that power. That
means the president, why do we have elections?
Well, that's just it. Molly Hemingway was on talking about these activist judges. She was on Fox News. Molly Hemingway, a contributor and somebody with a good conservative mind. Listen.
Well, it's hard to take people in good faith when they're talking about due process and rule of law, when they didn't care at all about due process and rule of law, when the border was completely open to bring in tens of millions of illegal immigrants over the past few decades, and nobody cared about this. That's why this nationwide injunction case before the Supreme Court is so important. You had an election. Donald Trump was very clear that he wanted to shut down the border and he wanted to deport people who were here illegally, and people voted for that. And now you have all of these rogue, lower-level judges who are frankly embarrassing the Supreme Court with these temporary injunctions, temporary restraining orders and nationwide injunctions, where they're saying, we don't care who won the election. We're going to pretend that Joe Biden is still president or that Kamala Harris won the presidency, and we're going to implement their immigration policies through these nationwide injunctions. I think the Supreme Court is saying, and it's, by the way, justices on both sides of the aisle. Elena Kagan has said you can't have a nationwide injunction where you can just wait out the presidency and have some partisan political judge decide what the policy is. So this is a real opportunity for the court, and I imagine they're going to take it and give some guidance to lower judges.
The thing is, she has more faith in the Supreme Court than I do. I think that when push comes to shove, they're partisans too, and I don't think they're going to make the right decision. So what happens if the Supreme Court comes out and says, it's okay for these judges to do that. It's all right for them to do it. Everybody on the continent knows that these rulings are an overstep. And if you just allow 9 judges in Washington to say, we think it's fine. What happens to our country?
Well, what's going on right now, that's what happens to it. What happens if we go back to the old story, the Epstein files, and let's say, okay, we got the files, we've redacted them, we got some really serious consequences here. We're going to have a press conference at 5 p.m., and the Supreme Court comes in, or a federal judge comes in with some kind of edict that says you cannot, present those documents.
Well, I mean, it very well may be the case. It might happen.
Or maybe they've already sent out a notice saying, you do this, this is what we're going to do. And, they're running around going, what do we do? But I don't know. There's more to that.
And is this going to be the downfall? Is this going to be the downfall of our country ultimately? Because, we've said
going to be. I think it is.
Well, we've said several times on this program, there are 3 different branches of government, right? Judiciary, legislative, and executive branches. And they're all equal as far as power is concerned. But that's not the case anymore.
No, because the Democrats figured out if you stack the deck in one, and the easiest one to do that is the court system, then now you've got your side of the fence, your branch, and you've got the two-tier system there. You've got everything you need to win.
You're just slapping down one of the branches. The executive branch becomes powerless. If the executive branch keeps coming out with these if the executive branch keeps coming out with these executive orders, and you keep slapping them down as quickly as they come out, you've taken away the power of the executive branch. My question is, at what point does the executive branch say, enough? Enough. You've stepped into our area right now, and we are not going to recognize this. I keep using the two words habeas corpus. Suspend it. Because we're in a crisis situation in our country. And with all due respect, I don't care whether they're wearing robes or not. These people are revolutionaries who are doing what they're doing. And mark my words, if you were to sit down in a room filled with every single one of these district judges who are coming out with these rulings, I would be willing to bet you that 99 and 4400% of them are Democrats.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you a question. John Q. Public, the American people, let's just say all of this led to, a confrontation, a civil war, we have a constitutional crisis, like they like to say. Do you have the stomach for a real constitutional crisis showdown?
Bill, I think you have to.
Well, you say that, and I might say that, but does the person sipping their coffee, having their bagel this morning, think that? Does Susie Homemaker think that? Does Touchy-Feely Bradley feel that?
If you said to a lot of the residents of Boston and Philadelphia in 1774, have you got the stomach for a revolution? What do you think about going to war against the British, which they considered to be their homeland, by the way? A lot of people thought of England as their home territory.
That was not even them. That was then, and this is now. And that was they, and this is
I'm trying to
us
say
now.
They had the same attitude as what you're just saying. A lot of them were complacent. They liked going to their farm and working there.
And that's what I'm saying.
They didn't want to be bothered by the problem. But eventually the problem became such a big problem that they had to address it. And I think that is what's going to happen here. Whether we want to or not, at some point, if the country doesn't fix itself, then we're doomed. We're doomed.
Yeah, when is it too big to not ignore? But when we make that decision, is it going to be too late? And I think we're at that point right now.
Bill, I was watching TV yesterday. You know that I used to work in New York City. I was there in the mid to late 70s, and I loved New York. I was a young man in New York, worked at some big radio stations. All that stuff is all well and good. But I was there before Rudy got into office. I was there when Times Square was still seedy. They still had, the worst of the worst hung around in Times Square. You didn't want to be there in the dark. And then Rudy came in and made Times Square into like Disney World. He did an amazing job. Everybody wanted to be there. It was a show place. And then the Democrats came in and screwed it up again. And now it's vile. If you watched video yesterday, there are these teenage gang members. I forgot what they call themselves, but they're like the Cub Scouts are to the Boy Scouts. You think of the Boy Scouts as the terrorists. Think of the Cub Scouts they're young trainees. They literally went into Times Square, a group of them, and attacked New York City police officers intentionally. They literally went up as a gang and started to throw rocks and hit them and punch them and then take off. And they just wanted to irritate and cause a problem. And by the way, I should point out that they were all illegals. They were all illegally here in this country. This was the Biden result. These people wouldn't be here. And what they should do. And by the way, the police, they didn't go out. They didn't hit them with billy clubs or spray them with pepper spray. They kind of chased them away like they were kids, because they were kids. But these kids are emboldened. I wouldn't go into Times Square right now. I loved New York. I thought New York was a great place to be. It was exciting to be in New York. I think it is a jungle now. The Democrats have allowed that city to just decay into something that is just not a pleasant place to be in. I wouldn't want my family to be there. I would try to not change trains in New York if I had to change a train in New York. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where we're going if we don't grab a hold of our country. It's not going to be limited to New York. You're going to start seeing the same things in Philadelphia, Washington, Miami, Pittsburgh, Cleveland. You're going to see it all around the country. I did see something, Bill, which I think showed us some hope. University of Washington had some Hamas, anti-Israel rabble-rousers on campus over the weekend. They were really they were vile. These people were yelling hateful things to police officers on the campus, and they were just being despicable. The difference between now and a year ago is that this weekend the cops got together and arrested them all. They just put them in the trucks and took them away and charged them, too. They didn't just take them to the station and let them go. They charged them. So maybe things aren't changing in the long run, but that's going to happen in New York. Those kids, and those, by the way, if a 12-year-old kid attacks a police officer and he's illegal, you should detain that kid, get his parents, and then deport them all. The reason for the deportation should be that kid. Anyway.
Well, here's an oopsie in the news. Convicted human smuggler who owned the vehicle in 2022, the traffic stop. Get this. He admits to hiring Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
Yeah, I saw that.
For multiple human smuggling operations.
Yeah.
So, the guy's he's an alleged criminal. Oh, no, he's not. He's a family man.
He's a Boy Scout. Yeah, he's a Maryland man. He's a Maryland man, yes.
Stick that up your tuchus there, Democrats. I mean, you knew who and what he is.
Yeah.
And, everybody does. But you know what? They'll say fake news, or they'll say, it's an allegation. It's an allegation. You can't prove it. Yeah.
Yeah, it says I guess it was the Tennessee Star, which said that Jose Ramon Hernandez Reyes, a guy who has been convicted of human trafficking himself many times, admitted under immunity. He got immunity for saying this. He admitted to hiring El Salvadoran national Kilmar Abrego Garcia for a string, not just one, but a string of human trafficking operations across the United States.
What they need to do is they need to bring in a couple more people and not buy any deals that say the same thing, so you can take that and shine it in the news so that they can quit that stupid narrative they have. But the thing I know about Democrats and narratives, they're on to this one. They put it on the back burner. They don't take it away. They put it on the back burner because the American people have a short attention span, and they'll figure they've forgotten. Bring her back out. Let's put her on boil again. And so, this is just something for them to latch onto for a stupid agenda that they have. And they got no agenda. It's about power, and that's all they want.
Well, speaking of Democrats, a Supreme Court justice down, I think it was in North Carolina. It was a contested race. And I guess a federal judge said, no, forget the contesting. Let the Democrat win.
Said, you got to do it right away.
Yeah.
And it's a Democrat judge. And the person that was ahead, but not by much, and surged up at the last minute. When they got to the recount, they were behind, and all of a sudden they get a sudden surge, but still not enough. Enough's enough. Let her, the Democrat, be the winner. Just, you got to do it. I said so.
Yeah.
What are you covering up there, pal?
I mean,
What are you
talk
trying to
about
hide?
mind you, at the end of the actual election, the Republican had won technically, and it was contested. And then in the contesting process, the Democrat, quote, started to show signs of a victory, and then I guess pulled ahead. Come on, we're going to have so much of this in the midterms. Trust me. This is why they've got to do a full court press to protect the vote in the midterms. Otherwise, they're going to steal it again.
This is why I sit there and say there's a lot of corruptness going on, and it runs deep, and it's got a lot of tentacles. This octopus is a big SOB that lurks beneath, and it's got its tentacles into everything. And how big is it? How bad is it? I guess we're going to find out. Time will tell.
Hey, you want to find out how to have a great cup of coffee in the morning? I can tell you that right now. You like how I worked into that?
Yeah, that was a good segue.
Thank you very much. Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee. It's a delicious medium blend roast. You can have it anytime you want to by going to our storefront, which is rightsideshop.com. Rightsideshop.com. You'll see a bunch of little knickknacks there you can purchase if you want to, but you'll also be able to find our coffee. It's a medium blend roast of hand-picked beans, perfectly put together and blended to make a great cup of coffee. We also, if you can't have caffeine coffee, we have the decaf, which will cover that area, and you don't lose any flavor in the decaf. It's still just as good, so you should try it. Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee at rightsideshop.com. And we're the only coffee company who have gone out of our way to bring Juan and Jose across the border. We won't tell you how we did it, to sing our jingles, guys.
Wake up on the right side with Right Side Coffee.
They do such a great job, too. Right Side Coffee. You got to try it. It's really good.
Even if you wake up on the left side of bed, that right side coffee will get you balanced and to the right again.
That's true. That's true.
It really does work.
Yep, it'll fix what ails you, even if it's politically caused. Anyway, I can't think of anything. You want to talk about anything else, or you want to pull the plug on this one right now?
We probably should pull the plug and see what's going on the news. Tomorrow will be a whole new day. It'll be another day.
It will be, and we'll be here hopefully to talk about the doings in the morning. It's amazing. We always end our program wondering, are we going to have anything to talk about tomorrow? And never fails, always a lot to talk about the next day.
Oh, by the way, one thing I did notice, Arizona, under a mandatory stay in the house edict because of air quality, I guess it's from 0 to 500 is the range. You get up into the hundreds, you're in trouble. It's like in the super red range, and they're going, don't go outside.
Is this the whole state?
Some 50,000 people, but that circle, if you look at the map, it's big, and there's weird things going on in the weather all over the place.
Oh, I've never seen more unpredictable and violent thunderstorms in our area than in the past week. Power outages, trees down, stuff that we have, don't get me wrong, we have thunderstorms in the springtime, but not like the ones we've had recently.
Well, look, we go through cycles in weather with global warming, and we're in that phase right now. It's a natural thing. They're saying what's going to happen this summer is going to be very bad. Did we mess around with things we shouldn't mess around with?
I don't. I think that we have
a little worse.
I think we have the ability to do stuff that we don't talk about.
Yeah, well,
you and I talk about it, but the government doesn't talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, we can tease for maybe another topic, but you got that's going on. You've got, a lot of things in the news that, would, raise speculation. I just wonder if we're being, you've got what's going on in India and Pakistan. What will that flare up to or anything like that? Yeah, there's some weird stuff to watch and see what happens and how it plays out in the news. I could go on, but maybe it's best just to,
Pull the pin.
Pull the pin and throw this grenade out into the field. We'll come back tomorrow. Until then, hasta la vista, baby. We're out of here.
This is CRN America.